Welcome to the show, Columbus. I'm Alicia, and I would like to welcome my very special guest. Is it Professor David Schwimmer?
Could be. Yeah.
Mr. David Schwimmer, or just David? I know him as David, and I feel really honored.
Yeah.
David is a paleontologist, and he is a professor, got to get my mouth straight here, at Columbus State University here in Columbus, Georgia. He's also a local musician. I'm sure many of you have had the privilege of hearing David sing and play. He's quite versatile. He plays many instruments. We're going to hear a little bit of his music, and we have an album here we're going to tell you about in just a little while. First, David, though, I want you to tell everybody about how you grew up, where you grew up, a little bit about your life. Where did you grow up?
New York City, Upper Manhattan, kind of a very, ordinary kind of neighborhood. At least I thought it was when I was a kid. Along the Hudson River, near the George Washington Bridge.
Wow! But now you're a Southern Yankee, aren't you?
I've been here a long time. Yeah, I've spent more than half my life here. So
I have to do this since I'm in the South. You ready? Like New York City.
New York City.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I was thinking of the commercial.
Yeah.
And I understand there's a difference in the Big Apple and New York. Somebody told me it's not all the Big Apple.
Well, it really depends. New York City is totally different from. New Yorkers call Manhattan New York City. Like my father, who's an old man, used to say, "You're going to go to New York," when we lived in Brooklyn. So it really depends on where you're from, what part. And if you live in Manhattan or New York City, which no natives call it, then it depends on the neighborhood.
Really?
Like they'll call this neighborhood Yorkville or that one the Greenwich Village and such. And there's so many people in New York City that each neighborhood is almost like a city.
Wow.
There could be 100,000 people in your 4-square block area. Well, bigger than that, but so it's
Goodness.
People develop enclaves within huge cities like that.
That's amazing.
Yeah, it is. It is. New York's a strange place. It's like the whole world in one compact
I bet it
place.
is.
Yeah.
Because you've got a little bit of every kind of person there
Yeah.
and occupation, and the cultures are just so intermingled.
Yeah. Of course, they didn't have anything like barbecue or Mexican food when I was a kid. Both of those came after I
But
left.
they had pizza.
They had the best pizza in the world, and they still do, I think. In fact, whenever an expat goes back to New York, the first thing you get is a street pizza. Just go up to a local store and buy a slice.
Gee, that sounds cool.
It is wonderful.
Okay, now you told me that your parents were immigrants, and I'll let you tell where they came from.
Well, actually, their parents were immigrants. They got here both within a year or two after their parents came here. So they were both technically born in America, but just by about 2 years each.
And they were from where?
Dad is from what was Hungary at the time, his parents, and now it's Ukraine. Mm-hmm. And Mom was from Romania, was an urban city in Bucharest.
Wow.
Mom's parents, anyway. But again, they're both American, so I'm technically second generation.
We're not going to get too technical
Yeah.
here. Your mother, you said, was a business executive, and she did some really fantastic things. Talk about your mother for just a moment.
Well, you never appreciate your mom for what she is when she's your mom, but she was a businesswoman, and she traveled every year into interesting places. She worked for a company that imported stuff. They imported a wide variety of things, chemicals, perfumes, all kinds of things. So she went to the sources. That included India, and one of her sources was in the Amazon jungle. So she took a canoe up the Amazon to go look at a plantation, and she went to China.
She was a gutsy lady.
She was a very gutsy lady, and I didn't understand quite that much when I was young.
Man,
Yeah, that was
amazing.
into her late 60s. She was traveling. She was quite a woman, and Dad was an artist.
You told me that that your dad married at age 40, and he was 50 when you were born.
That's right.
Okay, tell me about your dad, because you've had some interesting things that I want to hear all about.
But again, you don't know about your parents. You don't appreciate when they're your parents just afterwards.
Right.
Dad was born in the late 19th century. He grew up in a tough neighborhood in New York City, probably part of a street gang, as far as I could tell, because I think you had to then for survival. Mm-hmm. Then he was a semi-pro baseball player for a while.
My goodness.
Yeah, he's quite an athlete. He wasn't that big, but he was a real wiry, tough guy. Mm-hmm. And then he went to art school. He went to a couple art schools. And then he became a commercial artist, and he got hired by the post office, and they pretty soon put him to work doing artwork for the post office. And as far as I know, and again, my sister is more of a genealogist than I am, he was the only commercial artist working for the U.S. postal system in the whole country.
He designed what?
He made postage stamps. He did lettering and art for war posters in World War II.
Wow.
And
do you have any copies of those or any originals of those?
My sister is kind of the family archivist. I've got a few of his stamps.
Oh, my goodness.
All his original artwork, she has that. I've got lots of paintings and his drawings, though.
You know,
My house is full of those.
Those are not only treasures to you and your family, but I'm
Yeah.
sure those would be national treasures.
Yeah, although, starting about the 1960s, the post office commissioned independent artists to do their work. They didn't have a full-timer anymore. So all the younger stuff, the modern stamps, were done by consignment.
But
So,
still, that
yeah.
original
Yeah.
stuff has got to be classic, and it's got to be valuable.
Yeah,
and-
that's probably when my sister glommed onto it.
That sibling rivalry at its
Yeah,
finest.
we don't want to get into that. But I've got enough of his paintings and his drawings, so I'm happy with that.
Oh, that's wonderful. Now, he lived to be 97.
97, yeah.
Wow.
Wow.
Was he a person who really stayed in shape, took good care of himself and his health?
Well, he was very slim. He was always wiry. He was actually a pretty wiry, muscular guy into his 60s and 70s.
Mm-hmm.
He stopped working out when he was in his 70s, but he was...
Really?
Yeah, but he lived pretty healthy up until his 90s, which
That's
is not a bad
amazing.
model for life. He was very, very... I think he probably weighed 120 pounds when he died. He was very, very slim.
Were both your parents tall?
Mom was, Dad wasn't. Dad was probably 5'10" at his height. Mom was probably 5'9", which...
Really? And you were how tall?
When I guess I've shrunk with old age. I was over 6'4" when I was my tallest. I'm about 6'3" now.
There undoubtedly are relatives in your past.
Somewhere there's a gene, yeah. And I look like my dad, so there's no question about that.
That's amazing.
Yeah, I told David that one of my, as far as for me, one of the funnest things was trying to get him into a camera shot because he is a tall drink of water, ladies and
Well, I
gentlemen.
was taller
Yes,
when I tell you, I was trying to get to 6'5" when I was a teenager. Never quite got there.
Really? Well,
Yeah.
that's what made me ask that because we pre-recorded some things before the show today, and you're going to hear some of David's music in a little while. But Tim was just having a heck of a time trying to fit everything in there because it was either cut off his knees or cut off his head
Yeah,
or something.
yeah. It was a.
You were over there mutilating this poor boy,
Yeah. We wanted to get him in. It definitely was
It was a
how
trick.
should I
wasn't it?
say? It was very interesting to try to get it done. Let's put it that way.
Well, I don't know if the head or the knees are a better view. So.
No, we got you
Yeah,
in,
figure that
but
one out.
I don't know how.
Okay. Now, you went to, let's see, I've written all this down so I wouldn't forget. There was a particular college, and it was,
Well, I'll give you the backgrounds.
yeah, because you left home at 16
Well,
to
I
go
went
to
to
college.
New York City at the time had a program where you could skip a grade, and they started the students young, so it was no great feat. A lot of people in my generation in New York started grade school at 4 or something,
Really?
or 5, and we all skipped 8th grade. We had 7th to 9th grade. We didn't have middle school then. We had just junior high school. So there were lots of students who skipped a grade. So we all got out of, a bunch of my friends and I got out of high school at 16
Man.
or 17 at the oldest, and that's too young. I did it, but I'm not sure it was a good idea. So I went away to college, away from home, 1,000 miles away, to Wisconsin, and that was a change.
I bet it was.
Because, at the time, the University of Wisconsin in Madison was kind of a big football school in the Midwest, and going from, where I grew up to there was just real culture shock.
I bet it was, and a temperature shock too, probably, wasn't it?
Not so bad.
Not so bad.
New York City can be pretty cold. I remember a lot of snow. We grew up with sleds and ice skates. So that wasn't so bad, but the culture was strange.
Now,
But by the time I left, I loved the Midwest. I really,
bet you
I was
did.
real happy. Actually, all my life, I actually never knew it, but I wanted to be in the country. I didn't know it until I got out of New York City that I really liked being away from the big city.
I can almost understand that because when my husband moved us out into a rural area, I was furious. I didn't want to go. I wanted to stay in town. I was out there 2 weeks, and I said, never will I go back to town. I love
Yeah.
it out here. Love it. So I can
Yeah,
appreciate that.
Favorite
Now-
thing about Columbus is being able to have a garden, and
Yeah.
once in a while, there's an opossum that walks in my backyard, and raccoons, and I like wildlife, and I like the outdoors. So,
So do you live in a rural area now? Or?
no, I live in town, but I've got a house with enough of a yard to actually attract some animals and
Awesome.
grow a garden.
Now, did you say that you started out being interested in medicine?
I started out in pre-med.
Mm-hmm.
Whether I was interested or I was kind of pushed into it is a hard thing to say. From the time I was a little boy, I was going to be a doctor because
Mm-hmm.
my uncle was an internal surgeon, and my mom had been a nurse during World War II, a little bit, a practical nurse. It was just in the family instinct, I guess, that I was
So
going.
that was just the way you were
That
going
was
to
just
go.
the way I was going to go,
regardless.
and I didn't really think about it. So I started in pre-med, which wasn't a bad thing for me because the courses I took in pre-med actually lead toward my work. kind of a halfway biologist.
When did you
halfway
change your mind, and what made you change your mind?
organic chemistry. Which apparently I just read in the obituary for Stephen Hawking is why he didn't become a doctor.
Really?
Something about organic chemistry in college, and some of my students or people may have realized this, it's like a make or break course for a lot of people. It's a really hard course if it's not taught extremely well, and mine wasn't. It just, I couldn't get it. I didn't like it. I was out of there. I didn't want to take it, so I just dropped it, and that killed my chance of going to med school. And I wasn't sorry about it because I just really wasn't there. So I had been taking a course in anthropology, and I thought, this is really cool. You know, dissect.
Now, explain to viewers,
Yeah.
because I don't know about all of these. And what is anthropology?
Anthropology is the
precisely?
study of people, but I was and it ranges from people's cultures and folkways to their bones of the ancient people. And I was interested in the bones, in digging up old ancient man kind of stuff, which is kind of related to medicine in a way because I knew about anatomy and physiology and biology and chemistry, basic chemistry. So I got into physical anthropology, which is kind of a paleontology. It's the paleontology of humans. And then I kind of took some courses in geology, which is part of that field, and I thought, wow, we could look at things besides people too. So then I kind of segued into paleontology, and I'd grown up not too far from the American Museum of Natural History in New York, where all the best dinosaur fossils in the country are, and they were my old friends. So when I was a little kid, of course, every little kid loves dinosaurs, and
Sure.
I knew every dinosaur there by, so.
You know, that reminds me. My great-granddaughter, Lauren, generally comes here with me, and she's over on the couch now. And it was, 5 years ago,
Yeah,
maybe?
yeah.
David and I were playing a little music together, and I said, listen, I have a great-granddaughter who is just absolutely crazy about dinosaurs. She watches everything on TV. She reads everything. She even surfs the net, and she loves dinosaurs. Can you let her come see something? And she said, yeah, bring her on out. And I did, and you were the kindest person. You were so sweet. And I sent Tim some pictures. I don't know if we'll have time to show them today, but I'll post them on my page so that you can see. But you took her right under your wing, and she walked in, and I remember one of the first things was you were going to show her something, and I don't remember what it was, so I'm just saying this because I can't think of what it really was. And she said something to the effect of, that's a diplodocus femur or something like that. And you went, oh, she already knows that. And it was kind of cool.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm not sure my college students would say I'm so sweet, but
They're not supposed to.
They're not supposed
You're
to,
not
no.
effective if
No.
you're sweet. Now, so let's get back to school.
Yeah.
So you decided you were going to go into this geology kind of thing.
Yeah, right.
And then what happened after that?
well, I kind of straight track from there. I got a master's degree in geology from Buffalo, University of Buffalo. They gave me the first offer of an assistantship, a teaching assistantship, to basically support. Well, that was traditional. It's usually, back in the day, most people could get their way paid through graduate school with a teaching assistantship. Yeah, I'm afraid we're not quite as good. We have them in my school, by the way, but it's hard for everyone to get one now.
I bet.
And then I kind of got drafted into my next graduate school at Stony Brook, which was where I got my PhD.
Okay.
But I did sidetrack from studying dinosaurs and animals. I take my finger pick off. From studying big animals to studying little animals. So I did my doctoral
really?
work on invertebrate fossils,
Oh,
but cool ones.
really?
Yeah, I worked on trilobites, which people who know what fossils will know.
And I don't.
That's okay. They're just obscure dead things. But
So easy for you to say.
yeah, but back then you couldn't really make a living working on dinosaurs because they weren't that popular. And then came
That's
Jurassic
changed.
Park. Yeah,
Yes.
we call it the Jurassic Park syndrome. All of a sudden, everyone was excited about dinosaurs, and everybody knew about them, and the whole notion of how dinosaurs work changed.
Well, this came from Lauren. Do you know what you get when you cross a pig with a T-Rex?
A pig Rex, T-pig,
Jurassic Park.
Jurassic Park, of course.
Just
Thank
thought
you.
I'd throw that in
No,
there.
no, that's good. That's
You can
good.
tell that to your class. And
Yeah.
there'll be a
Ducks.
test on it.
Oh yeah, we
There'll be a
can.
test on this.
But actually, as a plug, after Jurassic Park came out, Steven Spielberg donated a huge amount of money for dinosaur paleontology research.
Oh, wow.
So you can't, give him credit.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Okay, so now you're teaching at Columbus State University, and your department is the paleontology,
No,
geology. What is
it's
it?
called the Department of Earth and Space Science,
Okay.
and we have a bunch of sciences. I sometimes call it the Department of Miscellaneous Sciences, because all the kind of physical sciences are put together. We have physics, geology, astronomy, and archaeology.
I'm sure they all do
in one
connect
department.
at some point, though, don't they?
They're
What do you
all,
think?
well, they're basically the non-biological sciences,
Mm-hmm.
except I'm actually partly a biological scientist too. So it's a lot of sciences that are hard to categorize.
Now, you've been just about, well, with the exception of Hawaii, you've been in every state in the United States and in Canada as well, and you speak French.
Un petit peu, yes.
Whatever you said.
Yeah,
I agree
a
with it
little
100%.
Yeah, part of being a geologist is you travel because
Mm-hmm.
I did my doctoral work in Montana, and
Oh, my.
I did research work in West Texas, and we have conferences I go to almost every year somewhere in the country, and
I bet that's interesting.
it's wonderful. I was at one in Seattle, Washington this past fall, and 2 years ago in Los Angeles, and a couple of years before that in Albuquerque, and yada yada yada.
So have you checked out Mount St. Helens? This
Oh
big
yeah, in
eruption?
fact, we went on a field trip there. It was an incredible site, but not since the eruption. But I haven't been there in the last 10 years, and I do want to go back.
I bet you do.
Yeah.
That would be amazing to me.
It's an amazing site if you've never seen it.
And I'll be the first one to say, David does not look like my idea of a paleontologist.
Oh, he
He,
does
he
mine.
reminds
Isn't
me
that
of
weird?
more of the Marlboro Man.
Uh-oh. Okay,
Oh.
good. Well, if you ever went to one of
Oh.
our conferences, you'd change your mind. We got some pretty rangy-looking people.
Really?
too. Yeah. Paleontologists are definitely not like the other children. They're well, virtually every male has a beard for sure.
There you go.
Mine's more trim than everybody else's,
It's
actually.
a masculine thing.
Yeah, but and the first time I remember back years ago, I went to first professional conference, and I was really impressed to see guys wearing suits and field boots. It was the weirdest
Really?
look. Yeah.
What a combination.
It was really, I don't think they even owned a pair of regular shoes. And this is back when guys, normally dressed up a bit. No one ever has worn a tie. Paleontologists are an interesting bunch.
Didn't you say at one point in time that you really preferred the outdoors to the indoor work?
I do, yeah. I don't get outdoors as much as I used to. I'm getting older now, but I
Understand.
try everything at time I can. My students get out with my colleagues a lot. Field work is a major part of the field.
What is the most interesting dig or whatever you call it that you've been a part of?
Well, I've got some really good sites around here in Georgia and
That was going to
Alabama.
be my next question.
Outside of here, the most interesting place I've worked is in Big Bend, Texas.
Oh, yeah?
It's really cool. It's one of our national parks that's got virtually nobody in it. It's out in high desert and almost nowhere land. I've been in places in Big Bend, Texas, in the park and outside the park, where you can't even get an English-speaking AM radio station. That's how remote it is. You can't find anything on your radio dial, not a single FM station, and the only AM stations are in Spanish.
Wow.
That's how remote it is. Imagine being in the U.S., and technically in the USA, and there isn't an AM or FM radio station within the shortwave radio's reach.
That's amazing.
That's
Of course,
amazing.
it's not so unusual now, but at that point in time, I'm
Well,
sure.
it wasn't that long ago. We're talking 10 years ago.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it's still.
Wow.
Big Bend is as desolate as you can get in the USA.
And what were you looking for there, and what did you find?
Giant crocodiles.
Did you find them?
Yeah. I went to a site where the biggest crocodile, well, not a relation, not actually a crocodile, but a relative, was discovered in the USA. And I had some from Georgia, and I was trying to compare them with the ones in Texas. So I went to the site where a 40-foot animal was
Oh, my
found. My
goodness.
God, yeah.
40
And it was
feet?
really remote. To get there, I had to build a road to get a four-wheel drive vehicle into the site.
Goodness.
It was really, yeah, I mean,
So
that's kind of an adventure.
You study hard, but you physically work hard too.
Some of the stuff is physical, yeah.
That's
I've hauled
amazing.
bones on my back that are.
Have you climbed mountains and things?
Yeah,
like I've seen some of the pictures.
Yeah,
and-
I've climbed mountains and done that stuff. I'm not doing that much anymore. But
that
I
would
have
freak
been
me
in
out.
some pretty remote places.
Now, you said dinosaurs in our areas, and I know you and I talked about
Yeah.
that when Lauren came over. Tell us about the dinosaur findings in our areas.
Okay. Well, when I got to Georgia, we had no record of dinosaurs here, period. And then a couple of years, about a year after I got here, an amateur collector brought me some things, and he said, "What are they?" And I said, "Bones." And we went to the site and discovered they were actually dinosaur material there.
Is that right?
I found, yes, so I guess I found the first dinosaur material in Georgia. And since the time and then I started working over in East Alabama, Russell County, Barber County, Bullitt County. Turns out, of course, dinosaurs didn't care what state they were in at the time.
They didn't stop for stop signs
Yeah,
either.
so basically the Chattahoochee Valley has got the only collection of dinosaurs in East Alabama, or Georgia.
That's amazing.
And we have 4 different species identified so far. we've got a big carnivorous dinosaur, which is like a small Tyrannosaurus. We've got one duck-billed dinosaur, kind of a
Is that a
yeah.
thing?
We've got one raptor,
Wow.
little one. Oops, sorry. And we have a ornithomimosaur, which is like one of those creatures that looks like a bird, like a big ostrich.
Lauren told me what that
Yeah.
was because she knows all of
Yeah.
these things, and I can't even say it. And she says, "You don't know what that is."
Yeah.
And I went,
Well,
No, I don't.
for Lawrence, it's called Struthiomimus. It's similar to that one. Although it's hard to tell Ornithomimus from Struthiomimus based on the bones we have. We mostly get tail bones, leg bones, hip bones, but to really key out the animals, you need skulls. And skulls don't preserve very well.
"Really?"
Yeah. Well, the technical reason, this is a long-winded thing, is in a sentence, our deposits were laid out in the ocean near shore, and most of the dinosaurs we're finding probably drowned.
Oh, really?
And the ones that drown are usually the young and stupid. So we're getting mostly small dinosaur relatives of bigger ones, and we don't get the whole bones because they get washed up in the beach and like shells on the beach get broken up. So we're getting mostly fragments, except once in a while we get lucky and we get a couple of bones together.
I wish I could remember the location. Quite a few years ago, I've always done things with the kids and been a room mother and chaperone for this and that and the other field trip. But we went to some place an hour or two away, and there was this huge creek, and everybody had the little
Yeah.
seines, and we found shark teeth.
Right. Well, you can do that in a lot of places.
And I had no idea.
I've got a site where in a given day I could probably get 100 shark teeth in an afternoon.
And that's what was happening there. And I had no, because we're not anywhere near the ocean today.
Well, we are, but we were then.
Today, yeah. And
Yeah.
I had no idea
And-
that the terrain had changed that
Yeah.
drastically.
Well, if people know the term fall line, which we use around here, that's the upper ocean level during the dinosaur age. The oceans were up to what we call the fall line, which runs through Columbus, through Russell County, across to Montgomery. I can't quickly describe all the areas. Goes around the coast up to South Carolina and up to Philadelphia. That's the upper water level during the dinosaur age.
Isn't that amazing?
It's about 140 feet above present sea level,
Goodness.
which is where the ice is going to go if we get all that melting. That's one of these climate change issues, which I don't think we want to delve into now. But
That's another show.
That's another show.
We'll talk about that later.
That's an important show.
It's
it is.
just amazing to me to even wrap my mind and think that dinosaurs were in Columbus.
Oh yeah, there's no doubt they were in Atlanta and they were up in every part of the eastern United States.
Wow.
But we only get their fossils where they're preserved. And you only get fossils preserved in certain environments, and the ocean environments make good fossil preservation. That's why we're finding them. So let's say they were climbing around the foothills of the Appalachians at the time, but there's nothing in the foothills that will preserve a bone.
What a shame.
It was a shame, yeah. So we're not going to probably know much about what the main dinosaur habitat was like in the eastern U.S.
Right.
At the time the dinosaurs living, the western U.S. was a lot more active. A lot of volcanoes, so they get a lot of volcanic deposits, and that's a great place to make fossils. So it's when we look at fossil deposits, it's not so much where they were, but where we find them. That's one of the things in my field. That's a thing you have to keep in mind.
So how many years or millions of years,
Yeah.
I guess, back do you think that
Well, I'll tell you, the dinosaur bones I have in my collections date from around 82 million years to around
Wow.
74 million years ago. But we have dinosaur bones that range right up to the end of the age, which is 66 million years ago. Then they went gone.
Yeah.
However, just a little technical point, we still have dinosaurs today.
That's what Lauren tells me.
But you know what we call them? Those are birds. Birds are, we now know, a
I did
kind of
not know
dinosaur.
that.
They're basically feathered little weird raptors.
Well, most people around here, they think the only mammals from this area are elephants, eagles, and bulldogs.
Right.
So,
right,
that's,
yeah.
Now,
but-
didn't you have something to do with the naming of one or two or three
Yeah,
dinosaurs?
I got a childhood fantasy. I got to actually name a dinosaur, in fact, a big carnivorous dinosaur, named it Appalachiosaurus. Two colleagues and I described it, but I picked out the name. Well, they wanted to give it some weird name, and I said, let's make it kind of meaningful. It's from the Appalachian side of the country, so why don't we just go straight?
Now, didn't you have some of the fossils or a fossil of that particular species that you showed to us that time?
Yeah.
I thought we
Yeah.
did, yeah.
I had the actual original specimen is in Birmingham in a museum. It was collected in central Alabama, but I'd been finding their bones and teeth before we got the whole thing. In other words,
Wow.
as I said, you need skulls, and I didn't have any skull. I had some interesting teeth and bones, which I knew were a tyrannosaur-like dinosaur, but without a skull, I couldn't give it a name.
Did you ever find a skull or enough of a
Not
skull?
in Georgia, but we have the skull in Alabama.
And you know that that's all connected
Yeah.
with the same.
Yeah,
That's
the leg bones, teeth are identical enough to say this is the same animal. So, like you get a good part of it from site A, and you get pieces of it from site B, and if the B and A match, you can assume it's the same animal.
That is amazing.
Yeah.
Okay, I have an off-the-wall question.
Oh,
We
sure.
certainly want to elaborate on it, but it just popped
Yeah.
into my mind at the time. There was a big hype about cloning several years ago.
Yeah.
Is it possible to clone a dinosaur, David?
Yeah, interesting. When Jurassic Park came out, we'd say no. It's getting closer. We have DNA now that's 100,000 years and in good shape, meaning we can exactly tell you what the genetic makeup of something 100,000 years ago was. We get snippets of DNA older, but whether you can get the whole genome, that would mean to be able to clone, you have to have the whole DNA makeup. We don't yet have the whole DNA makeup of a dinosaur, but I would not say it's impossible.
Would it be wise?
People are debating whether it'd be wise to reconstruct mammoths, for example.
Yeah,
We-
that's kind of spooky, isn't it?
There's a group that's actually trying to do that because Indian elephants are close to mammoths, and they're claiming they could basically clone a mammoth from an Indian elephant. So maybe you could clone a raptor from a bird.
Well, not that. That would be
Yeah.
okay.
Well, yeah,
Sort of, kind of.
sort of, kind of. I'm not enough of a genetics expert to tell you how practical it is. It's not impossible. 20 years ago, I would have said it was probably impossible. Now it's getting closer. The technology of what they call CRISPR technology, where you can edit genes and do that stuff, is getting to the point where it may just be possible to insert the right part of the genome into a bird genome to make a
Today?
raptor.
That's fascinating to me. That is just absolutely
Yeah,
fascinating.
it's-
I think that the trick there would be, what are you going to do when you make it, and can you contain it, and can you control it? That
Right.
would be the tricky part.
And that's one of the reasons that environmentalists get worried about things like GMO crops,
Right.
which don't bother me so much, but it bothers many people. I'm more concerned about things like what they call the frankenfish, the salmon they breed that grow twice as fast, which are getting into the wild. That's,
Yeah.
to me, is the scary part.
It is, because that's kind of detrimental to our
It has the potential of wiping out natural
Yeah.
species.
Yeah.
That's not just possible. That's actually maybe happening.
that is scary.
Yeah,
That's
that-
scarier than cloning a dinosaur
Right.
in a sense.
Actually, I just read an article. It's interesting. Apparently, there's a stink bug from China, which is devastating crops up in the Northeast, which just began to show up in Georgia. There's no natural enemies. They're apparently so common in some places, according to this article, and it was in New Yorker magazine. Usually, it's pretty good research. That there are people who will open their door, and a million of these will come in, and if you squash them, they smell pretty bad.
Yeah.
That's just an example of the kind of invasive species we have to worry about. To me, that's really the scary part of the future is not so much artificially breeding things, but transporting things from their
Mutations
habitat
and
then giving them environments where they have no enemies.
Wow.
And we're seeing a lot of that. That's a little more worrisome.
Well, now this is not on land; it's
Yeah.
underwater. But didn't you work for Jacques Cousteau for a year and a half or so as a
Yeah, it's kind of
consultant?
fun. My field of paleontology is a wonderful, interesting field, but it's hard to get a good job. And so right after grad school, after having been in university for 10 years, getting kind of tired of being poor, I took a job to actually make some money. And by lots of roundabout coincidences, I got hired as a freelance writer and researcher for Jacques Cousteau's.
Was that exciting?
It was, but it didn't live as well as it reads. I basically sat in an office in New York City and wrote text. A little bit of screenplay work for him. Spent time with him. I learned why I don't want to be very, very famous, because it's hard to exist if everybody wants your attention.
So you never really got to go on any of the expeditions or anything
no
like that?
expeditions.
What a shame.
Most exciting thing, I got a trip to a Los Angeles office to deliver some manuscript.
And I know you would really love to get your feet wet literally in that one, wouldn't you?
Yeah, although I'm not an oceanographer. I just sort of pretended to be.
But you could have stayed on the boat and watched everything.
Oh, I could,
You could
yeah.
have been
Well,
right there firsthand. That would
yeah,
have been
although
cool.
I have to say, at the time I was working from Cousteau wasn't out either. He was basically doing PR work,
Oh, was he?
television shows, office work. He wasn't really exploring. But I will say, he was a very nice guy, by the way. He was not. I've learned that very, very comfortable, famous people are nice people.
Oh, really?
At least the ones I knew. I can't say for others, but the ones amongst the famous people I've met, they're very secure and very generous.
Well, have you? Do you think that you have reached the pinnacle of what you want to do in that field right now in your life?
Well, I've been doing it for 40 years. After a while,
I mean, there's no more aspirations of doing something
No,
bigger or better.
I'm still doing
You're cool.
research, and 2 weeks from now I'm giving a paper at a meeting in Knoxville. I'm still doing research in a few fields. So as long as there's stuff to do, I'm going to keep working. So I've got, in my field, I basically work with discoveries. But the nature of discovery is you don't know what you're going to find.
Oh, I'm sure.
So-
And what would you tell your students, and what do you tell your students about this field and the upsides, the downsides, the reasons to get into it, the reasons not to?
Well, in paleontology itself, I also teach geology. So in paleontology, you should not do it unless there's nothing else you want to do, because it's a real tough career track. I've got one student who will definitely do it, and he's got the chops.
Wow.
It's a very tough career track because there aren't that many jobs. Like music, like theater, like photography, so many people want to do it because it's such fun. It's hard to get a professional job. Everyone wants to collect. I could dig up 50 people to go on a dig anytime, but trying to get a job for them is different. So I would tell students only become paleontologists if it's absolutely the only thing you want to do. But you can be a geologist. There are plenty of job opportunities for geologists, and then do paleontology, which is basically how I got into it. But if it's the only thing you can do, then do it. It's a very tough career track because you have to be almost a full developed biologist and a geologist at the same time.
So education and long, hard years of study are a must.
Yeah, and you virtually need a PhD to do professional work. You can work it with a master's degree, but you're going to be a field assistant, and the pay is, not very good. Also, another advice I give to my students is, in this field, if you have to pay your way through grad school, you shouldn't be in grad school because you're going to come out in debt without a job.
Wow.
So make sure you're good enough to get full-time support.
From the time you got out of high school at age 16 and all of the time that you devoted to your studies to become the professor, the doctor that you are now, how many years did that encompass?
10 years at university, then 5 years the work with Cousteau, then I did some consulting work for a private company as an environmental geologist. So then I spent 5 years, then I came here.
Wow.
Wow, it's a long, tough
You paid your dues,
I
didn't you?
paid my dues.
Okay, since you've done all that and you've paid your dues, let's talk about music.
Okay.
And I know that you play many instruments, and we'll ask you about that later, but right now we're going to let you do a song for us, and we'll be right back.
This is a guitar piece I want to do. It's the one I wrote called Whatever Blues. Okay, so when you're ready. Start again. Letter came with my cornflakes this morning. When our love says I'm gonna be gone forever, forever. Late night comes a knocking the door. Yeah, woman, she's back, she's ready for more. Forever. Yeah, whatever. Telegram comes, some real bad news. IRS says I gotta pay my dues. I better. take my car, my kids, my home. If I'm paying what I owe 'em, I'd better, yeah, whatever. Later comes in my evening bail. Dropped all the charges, ain't facing no more jail. Yeah, it's better. It's better. Money comes, money goes. Woman comes, woman goes. Whatever. Yeah, whatever. Got the whatever blues, so hard to choose, nowhere to turn. I'm really confused. Here's the bad luck, then good news. It's hard to commit. I don't, well, anyway. Whatever I choose, it all gives me blues. But the good old bad luck, whatever blues.
Okay, that was cool. I like that, and we're going to do some more of that before the show's over. Before I start asking you questions, and we're going to give you some information on how to obtain this little album that I have here. This is one that David spent a couple of years working on and producing with some other local guys that I think a lot of, Henry and Doug Conley. Who else is in this album?
Well, Stan Edwards is playing guitar, and he produced the record. We have Marcia.
His wife?
Marcia Short singing, a couple other people singing along. Brian played mandolin on there.
Brian.
Oh, God,
Brian who?
oh, give me a second. I got to remember. I don't know him as well. He was Stan's friend.
I thought you started to say Brian Mallard. I thought
No,
Brian
not
doesn't
Brian
play
Mallon.
mandolin.
No, it's Brian Fowler.
Okay.
Played mandolin.
Wow.
Christina Caldwell did some vocals. John Phillips did percussion.
Christina? Oh, I
Yeah.
haven't seen her in a while.
John Phillips did percussion. We had a lot of people helping us in various songs.
Well, and I appreciate that. David's given this to me, and so I've got one. And if you guys want one, you need to get in touch with Henry Conley, Facebook, David Schwimmer, SCHWIMMER, David Schwimmer. These are Columbus, Georgia guys, Facebook. We can give you an email address also here in just a little while. But let's talk about music for just a
Sure.
second. Now, how long have you actually been involved in music, and how did you get started?
When I was 11, Mom gave me a guitar. Not a very good one. In fact, it was a really terrible guitar. And I had 2 lessons where I learned to go strum, 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 2-chord strumming. And I got tired of the lessons. But I kept working at it. And back in those days, New York City, was lots of folk music, as they called it. It wasn't really folk. We call it
What
Americana.
era was that? What time frame was that?
50s, 60s.
Okay.
A lot of folk music. People like Pete Seeger would come down to the Greenwich Village and lead people singing.
Wow.
So there was lots of models, and I kept with it, and I got better and better. And in high school, we had lots of people playing guitars in high school. Back in the day, when I was in high school, we had a lot more freedom, I think. So during rec hours, hours between classes, we all get around and play music.
Wow.
And I'd take a guitar to work. The first guitar was the first good guitar when I was 13. I got a pretty nice quality classic guitar, a nylon string one. And I'd take it on the subway to school in the morning, and I'd play in the subway, practice finger picking.
You put your little tin cup out there and pay your way through
No,
school.
no, I didn't think about making money at this time. By the time I got to college, I was pretty comfortable playing guitar, and then I got into the University Glee Club.
Oh.
And they had me playing some stuff with them. And then I started playing a little bit at fraternity parties and such, and started getting paid a little bit. And then I picked up a banjo. I forget why I got next thing I got was a harmonica. That was when Bob Dylan was coming along, and I started playing Bob Dylan type pieces with the harp around the neck,
Right, right.
So I was doing Dylan stuff, And then I forget why, but oh yeah, bluegrass. I know the Flint Beverly Hillbillies just came out,
Oh,
and I heard bluegrass for the first time. I thought, wow, that's really cool. So I got a banjo, and I started trying to play bluegrass banjo, I got a copy of Pete Seeger's banjo book and Earl Scruggs' banjo book, and I learned to play from that.
oh my goodness.
And tried to copy the Earl Scruggs pieces. I
Now, the
heard.
banjo you played earlier, you told me that was made in the 20s.
Yep.
The body part of it was made in
Yeah,
the 20s.
that's an old Vega from 1920s. I bought that on just what they call the pot, and then I put a new neck on it because it had been originally a tenor banjo.
And I know they're not easy because my brother played banjo for a little while, and it was extremely difficult.
Well, as you probably can hear from what I tried, playing solo banjo is a different kind of thing. When you have a backup rhythm thing, you play against it, you syncopate against it. So I play much better banjo.
So you play guitar and dobro and banjo and harmonica
Yeah.
and what else?
Well, I can play bass, but not very well. I picked up the dobro is the last one I picked up, and I'm still haven't gotten the chops.
For people who aren't into music, explain what a dobro is.
Dobro is interesting. It's a 1930s invention, a slide guitar that's got its own kind of built-in metal amplifier called a resonator. So it's got a lot of sustaining, long notes, and you play with the slide, and you get these really interesting sounds. That's what I'm working on now. I'm not that comfortable with
Well,
it.
I think they're beautiful instruments.
it-
They're so
when
pretty.
it's played well, when it's played well, it's a fantastic instrument.
But you play them on your lap. You don't hold them upright.
Right. You play it on your lap. You play it hard. You can play with a strap horizontally. You can play it standing too, but you have to have it horizontal. It's challenging because if you're used to fretting instruments with your fingers, like I have all my life, now you're playing with a bar, and the bar's your fret, and it takes a lot more.
I bet it
it's a
does.
different
Kind of like
thing.
a steel guitar.
Exactly right. It's basically a non-electric steel guitar.
That's amazing.
And you can do steel guitar parts with it, which is in fact what I mostly try to play. Not to plug the album, but I play a little dobro on the album, in fact.
Oh, cool. I'm looking forward to
Yeah.
hearing. Some of these songs I've heard you do live, but I'm really looking forward to hearing the album. When you do it at open mic and everybody's just kind of ad-libbing their way through, you don't
Yeah.
get that full effect into something that's really produced. Okay, now you're also a writer, so tell me, how did you become interested in not only performing but writing music as well?
Well, it's inevitable. Eventually, you're going to want to make a song or something comes to your mind, and you think about it. The songs I write are not to be taken seriously. Most of them are kind of comical or
I
semi-comical.
love the dog song. I love
Yeah.
it.
And it's not, if anybody listens, here's the dog song, it's not really me, so don't take it too
Oh,
seriously.
I'm glad you told me that.
Yeah, a couple of people who've heard it thought, "My God, is that?" It's not autobiographical. It's just some ideas, and the song I recorded just a little while ago. That was just a notion. Has nothing to do with anything in my life.
Whatever.
Whatever. Yeah, I just heard people kept saying it. They'd say, "Yeah, whatever," and I thought, "There's a song in that."
Of course.
A lot of times, just like country songs, you hear a line and you think that should be a country song. So that's how it came about. But it's just it just seemed like I had a melody in mind. I wanted to do something with it, or I can't exactly tell you why the various songs. I've only written a couple of songs that I like. I'm really critical. I started one called "I Love My Truck." But
I remember that one too.
But
I love that
could
truck.
not. I didn't finish that one. I guess maybe I'll finish it
Oh,
one.
wow. I would love to hear
Yeah.
the end of that one. That's a good one.
Yeah, this line came to my mind. I love my truck and sometimes my wife, and I was thinking, there's a good country song in that. So I tried to figure out where to go on that, but I got about halfway through and I couldn't come up with the rest. But that kind of thing.
Well, who, if anyone, a person or an artist, might have
Yeah.
inspired you to
Yeah.
get into music and to move forward with it?
Well, that I could tell you. In New York City, back when I was a kid, there was not when I was a kid, when I was a teenager, there was a musician named Dave Van Ronk, kind of like the epitome of the New York City Americana artist. I don't use folk music anymore because it really isn't folk music. That's old-fashioned. That's much too old-timey. Kind of composed, but non-rock music. And he was in fact, his guitar style is one I've copied. Kind of a lot of blues, plus
I
a
was
little
going to
bit.
ask you about what kind of guitar style would you say you play, because you're
Yeah,
very,
well,
very nonconformist.
I learned a bunch of kind of styles. I learned what's called Travis picking, which is that rhythmic bump ba, da, 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 with a syncopated finger picking. Then I learned a little more blues style, which is more single string noting. I play a little flat picking country music, and I learned to play bluegrass backup. There's a couple. I cannot play rock guitar to save my life. I've tried occasionally. Somebody like Skylar, I watch his technique. I understand what he's doing, but I can't do it. It's just not my idiom.
So now, and I interrupted, and I'm so
Sure,
sorry.
no.
But who was your inspiration? What really got you motivated?
Well, there's a bunch of people. I mean, I grew up at the time when Kingston Trio and Peter, Paul, and Mary were popular, and frankly, we didn't appreciate it at the time because they were everyday stuff, but they were really good.
Well, now that you've said that, the minute you said that, I thought, I've heard you sound similar. Not exactly, but I've heard similar sounds
There's
come from you.
one or two. Actually, there's a Kingston Trio song I play all the time called Scotch and Soda, which is a
Mm-hmm.
fantastic piece of music. It's actually jazz. And I kind of aspired to learn to play jazz guitar, which is very complex.
Oh, yeah.
But their song is, it's all major sixth chords and quite beautiful. Peter, Paul, and Mary stuff is incredibly beautiful, but it was really their vocal harmonies
Mm-hmm.
that were so good.
Yeah, that'd be really hard to imitate.
And then, I like Dylan's music. I never liked his voice, like
Right.
everybody always says.
Everybody.
Everyone likes his music, not his voice. I love John. Lately, I've been doing more Johnny Cash.
Really?
Yeah. And
Well, you got the voice.
I got the voice
What is-
for it.
What is the fellow's name? And I know you know who I'm talking about because certainly somebody's asked you. Long Black Train.
Josh Turner.
Turner.
Yeah.
Have you tried that one?
I have tried it. It's the voice is fine. I can do the voice. The style isn't my choice.
Right.
Although there's one called Your Man, I think, which
I haven't heard that one.
it's a pretty decent. I think it's called Your Man. I'm thinking about it.
Well, you have such a clear bass voice, but you also
Yeah.
have that folk trend in your voice, especially on line ends. I've noticed the
Yeah.
line end drops and that sort of thing. So that's definitely not
Yeah.
Johnny Cash. And,
No,
and you
um,
always got to learn to go, if you're going to do Johnny Cash. I've never heard
it turns
you
out
do that either.
I know I was trained a little bit in bass voice and choir in
really?
college. Yeah, we had a good coach, so I was in the glee club in the university choir. So I had some training in how to project, and
Mm-hmm.
get the basso thing out there. Turns out my voice is a lot deeper than Johnny Cash's. He's got a bit.
can believe
He's
that.
got more of that. I don't know what you call that kind of
Chest
growly
voice?
baritone. Yeah, more of a chest baritone.
Mm-hmm.
His range was actually barely bass. It was really more baritone.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't have anything like his vocal
Merle
quality.
Haggard could hit some,
Right.
low notes, so low notes. And I
Yeah.
was amazed to hear that because I never realized it.
Yeah. No, I enjoy singing Merle Haggard stuff. Frankly, I like country music a lot. I like Waylon Jennings' music. I like Johnny Cash's music a lot, which, coming from New York, I feel like fraud singing that stuff. But I don't even try to do an act. My accent doesn't work, but I do like the voice sounds.
Well, you could feign the accent enough for a song, I'm sure.
Yeah, sure. You hear English singers sounding American and
Yeah.
vocals. Yeah. But I kind of steal everybody's stuff, to be honest.
Hey, that's the name of the game.
Yeah.
The name of the
And
game.
I'm going to assume that all these genres come through on your CD. that
They
you
do,
are.
actually. That CD ranges from light rock to that banjo music. There's a lot of different kinds of stuff.
So where can we look to, if we're interested in getting your CD, where can we?
Well, right now, the only place to get it is through either Henry or myself. If you can
Okay.
contact us on Facebook, or you can send me an email at dschwimmer@mindspring.com, MINDSPRING.
Wow, still on Mindspring,
I'm still on
huh?
Mindspring. I've had the address so long, I hate to change it because everybody knows that one.
This is true.
Earthlink picked it up, but it's still there, and I sure hope they don't drop that because I'd have to recontact a million people to tell them no, my address changed. So it's dschwimmer, one thing, lowercase, at mindspring.com.
And
SCH.
we'll also put it on the page.
All right, thanks.
DSCHWIMMER. Now, there are a lot of people watching. I have friends who watch the show, and they're not from our area, and they don't know everybody the way we know.
Yeah,
It's a
sure.
small town thing. So if you go on Facebook, most of my friends are on Facebook, you look for David Schwimmer,
Yeah.
with that spelling, or you look for Henry Conley, Conley. And either one of those, but David will absolutely be happy to send you an album, and I don't even know the price on these things
Oh,
or
$10
anything.
sounds everything postage
$10.
with postage and tax.
Yeah. And I assure you it'll be good, and it will be different, and it won't be your typical run-of-the-mill thing. I think you'll enjoy it. I'm
By
sure.
the way, if you check for me on Facebook, put the R middle name because there's a famous actor, David Schwimmer, who's not me.
I remember
Yeah.
seeing that one time. Yeah.
Sometimes people have a hard time finding me because they get
David R.
David R. The middle initial.
What's your middle name?
Richard.
Really?
Yeah,
David
really.
Richard.
Yeah.
I never would have guessed you for a Richard.
I wouldn't either. That's my mom's choice. It wasn't mine.
I understand that.
She-
Well, Tim, did we miss anything? I know you've got a ton of questions over there.
No, I was just fascinated to listen to David. I know we're running on 45 minutes now. I wish we had a couple more hours because
fine.
So do I.
I know he's got stories, and hopefully we can get him back on real soon.
I'd
Yeah,
love to
in
do
my
that.
in my business, we talk for a living, so I'm used to it.
Well, I'll tell you what, we're going to have you back on here sometime, and I want you to think of a lot of really unique things that you've participated in, things that have happened, funny stories, interesting stories, and you have those all compiled, and we'll get you back in a few months, and we'll have part 2 of the David Schwimmer, the show.
All right,
Does
thank
that
you.
work for you?
That was great.
Okay.
I appreciate it.
Now, next week, we're having, I believe next week is Tom Roten. Is that correct?
I believe that's the gentleman's name that you
Tom
had told me.
Roten. Tom Roten will be talking about steel guitars. And, you know, they're about to phase out. We're trying to get those back in. We just lost a really, really fine person, Bill Cook, who was a phenomenal steel guitarist and head of the Steel Guitar Association, I believe, in Alabama. But we're going to interview Tom Roten, wonderful man. He's a minister and he's a steel guitarist, and he also has a TV show that he produces. That should be an interesting show. And then I think we have Rachel.
Rachel, a lot of you know, is R.S. Williams. She's a writer out of LaGrange, Georgia. Should be on
April 7th?
April 7th. Because I know that we're having a gentleman next week, like I said, with a steel guitar, and then we're actually going to take a week off here at the show so we can enjoy Easter with our families and give
That'll
you
be
guys
wonderful.
the same, same time for your families. So.
But we'll be telling you more about that. Be sure to watch Facebook, the show Columbus, and we'll keep you apprised of all of the things that we plan. I'd like to thank you so much, David, for coming. It's been so interesting.
pleasure.
I'm like Tim. I could have listened forever and ever, and we'll do it again. So, guys, tune in to the show Columbus every week, with the exception of the Easter weekend and some specific times we may make you aware of. See you next time, guys.
Have a great week, guys. Love you.
Bye.